Now, representation in the media is simply how the media portrays certain types of people or communities. There are a number of minority groups who are underrepresented, and these include individuals such as women, people of color, the LGBTQA plus community, non-Christian religions, and differently abled people. Now, the importance of representation in the media is and should always be a discussion. Joining us this evening via Zoom, we have former Big Brother Mzansi Season 3 housemate all the way from South Africa, Johannesburg, Ukho Samela, who's also known as Sis Tamara, who is passionate about representation. And seeing their appearance on the show was an opportunity to elevate conversations and awareness of the richness of identity. Sis Tamara, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Good evening, Nina. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm fantastic. How are you doing in South Africa?
I'm good. I mean, the pressure's there. I mean, there's so much that's happening post Big Brother, but I'm good.
Awesome.
I'm not gonna lie.
Let's talk about, representation and identity, which is a topic quite, dear to your heart. Why is this of such importance to you?
You know, growing up, especially in the village and a very patriarchal society, there are so many expectations of how to be as a man and beyond that as a person. So for me, just seeing Big Brother coming back to Mzansi, I just saw the opportunity to actually teach people what it means to be human first, even before your sexuality, even before your race, even before your religious belief. So yeah, it's very important because there's so much ostracizing of people because of such issues. And I think it was so dear to my heart because it's a journey that I'm on myself as being a queer body myself.
Yeah. What's your take on marginalized groups being represented in the media, especially on, big platforms such as Big Brother?
For me, it's very important because for the longest time, I feel, especially where queer bodies are concerned, our stories are always told from one perspective, which is the time from a cisgendered or a heteronormative perspective. So platforms such as Big Brother are very important to allow us queer bodies to tell our own stories, our own experiences from our own perspective, rather than just to have it being told or it being dumbed down to something that's not even close to what we are experiencing ourselves as queer people. And for me, for the longest time, especially in the media, the inclusion of minority groups, especially queer bodies, it's only there when maybe there's a campaign and they need to make sales. So for me, it had to be beyond that, where it's just the fetishization of queer bodies in certain instances, but it had to be a daily thing. People need to understand that we are here and we are here to stay, and we are more than more the stereotypes and everything else that is linked to what being queer is or means.
Yeah. Speaking of, these stereotypes and narratives that we often see when discussing media representation of marginalized, various marginalized groups, stereotypes are often a primary concern. Why do you think that this is the case?
For me, I think because I've also been on the other side, and this is because of how I was brought up, the society I was brought up in. I think it's the fear that comes with it, and it's the lack of information. And I think that's why it was important for me to not perpetuate those stereotypes and those misconceptions about, especially my group, my people, the society that I went into the house primarily representing.
Yeah. And speaking of this, minority group that you had an opportunity to represent on this, this international platform, how has that really sort of, aided you? And what do you think you've learned from it and that you can also teach others going forward?
What I actually learned is that I still myself, I have a lot of unlearning and learning to do, and it was bigger than me, and I'm realizing that, especially after leaving the house, Ubana, as much as I went into the house and I wanted to use Big Brother as a platform to teach and to disband all these misconceptions and these stereotypes, I learned that I have so many things that I myself still need to unlearn that maybe I was brought up believing, or, you know. So it was just realizing that I have so much that I still need to learn and unlearn. And I also need to be kind to my own people, because we have, just for an example, especially when it comes to dating and these apps and preferences, I just thought about how we are so unkind to each other, and we just hide behind it's a preference thing. So there are so many things that I myself still need to unlearn and learn still within my own community.
That's fantastic, and that's an awesome introspection that you've done there. What was the reception like, you know, with fellow housemates? And were they warm towards you? Were they curious? Did they have a lot of questions? Talk to us about, you know, the relations and interactions with your fellow Big Brother housemates.
It was crazy, because initially when I went into the house, I was so anxious, because I was like, okay, what's the reception going to be? And I think I was just expecting them not to be responsive or receptive of me, because I'm loud and I'm proud and I'm bold. And I used Sister Mara as an alter ego to just propel me to leave that corner that I was always in, I found myself in, of not being confident, of being fearful of everything, and to just be loud and proud. So when I got into the house and people were actually willing to listen and were willing to learn and wanted to engage, for me, that was a pleasant surprise, because I think I'm always very protective of myself because of past experiences of how people, I'm already stigmatized as a queer person. So I was expecting that, especially from the guys in the house. I thought I would have to constantly walk on eggshells and, you know, set boundaries, not necessarily for myself but for them, because it's a thing of I don't necessarily want to be caught in the crossfire, or maybe for people to feel like I made people feel uncomfortable, because I've always found myself in those situations where, especially when I'm with guys specifically, that I need to think about what I say, how I move. And now it was even harder for me to create bonds the way I wanted to create bonds in the house, because I was under this microscope. But I'm not gonna lie, the reception from everyone in the house, and how teachable everyone was, and how honest they were in them not understanding certain things and wanting to understand, and not just poking just for the sake of it, because most of the time, especially because queer bodies are very sexualized, the topic of the day is always sex, which wasn't the case. And it was just them wanting to understand me from a human perspective, even before a queer perspective. So that was very refreshing for me. And yeah, I enjoyed that. And
that's fantastic.
Teachable moments.
Awesome. How is your alter ego that you mentioned is an alter ego, Sister Mara, different from Ukho Samela?
Ukho is very shy. Ukho is one of those kids in the class that even when I know the answer, I will not answer, because I'm like, you're putting me on the spot. So Ukho is behind the scenes, and Sister Mara is in front of the camera, is the life of the party, is the easygoing one. Ukho is the overthinker. Ukho is the one that's very logical and thinks about everything, to scrutiny, everything. In Ukho's head, it's that's where the anxiety comes in. And then Sister Mara kind of like calms Ukho down in the side, and she's like, you know what, there's more to life than just worrying all the time. So Sister Mara is the life of the party.
The Big Brother platform is quite a big one, and anybody that has an opportunity to be on, you know, a reality show of that nature, it really opens doors. Do you think that you've used this platform to really bring, not to really bring, but did you really, you know, do justice in representing the LGBTQI plus community whilst you were on this platform? And also, let's talk about the opportunities that it's brought for you, and what your future plans are.
Yeah, it's so crazy, and I think that was my biggest worry in the house. Am I representing my people the way I should be? And when I came out, the love I've been getting, it just validates that the work that I went into the house and I wanted to do, I did it. Even if maybe some people might not feel like it was 100%, but the love I've been getting so far, it just validates that. And when it comes to opportunities, There is no way that you can get on the platform such as Big Brother and not get opportunities. And I think, again, it depends on what you want and what you use the platform for. And for me, I went into the house, I already had a plan. And right now, it's so crazy because I'm back at school, which is also a challenge. I'm doing my final year in BA Film and Television. I'm also trying to push my acting. But there are opportunities that are coming my way, but it's just a matter of me directing everything and not just taking everything as it comes. Because one thing I don't want to do is just to burn out. It's more about the longevity in the entertainment industry, which is an industry that I really want to cement myself in.
Yeah. And speaking of cementing yourself in the entertainment industry, sometimes it's so easy to just do things to secure the bag. But I want to know, of course, there's going to be lots of opportunities and open doors that are heading your way. How picky and are you going to be about the roles that you take on now? Because you have a community to represent. You sort of have a responsibility almost because of, the fame that has come with being a Big Brother housemaid.
So that's a responsibility that I did not actually really think about, that I would still have even beyond Big Brother. So when it comes to the industry and the things that I would want to do, I think, it's about constantly having those conversations with myself, conversations that I had with myself even before I knew that I might even have a chance of going into the house. So it's just basically sticking to the plan. And if the plan has to change, how does it change? Does it still align with who I am first and foremost, even before me representing my community? Because I can't represent people if I lose myself. So I think it's just making sure that my values, my principles, I don't lose those with everything that I want to take part in. But yeah, opportunities, I'm obsessed with reality TV. So I'm crossing fingers that something else is going to come in the near future. And also my acting, I'm obsessed with storytelling. And I think that's why I ended up even going into BA Film and Television and the directing side, because I really want to tell queer stories like from our perspective. Nothing that, like, it's always the same thing. I think we need fresh stories, especially when it comes to my community. And trust me, there are tons of filmmakers that are more than capable of doing that.
Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. It was absolutely lovely speaking to you, and all the best with your future plans and endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Nina.
That was Ukho Samela, a.k.a. Sis Tamara, who was a Big Brother contestant in Johannesburg and Mzansi Season 3, speaking to us there about their experience and their plans.